Right. So just put your hands together. Tapping over your face. Your head and neck. And your arm. The other side. Part of your chest. Belly. And your legs. So sit back. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. And just give yourself a chance to experience what is hopefully for you an increasingly familiar sensation of this sort of settling in process in mind and body. Obviously, with the change in your posture and your weight dropping back, we feel hopefully a release of tightness and stiffness in the body. And with that, this sort of focusing downwards or draining downwards in a sense of our thoughts. Somebody once described it as though you get a jar of muddy water and just stand it on a table. And if you leave it there for long enough, the mud settles and there's a clearer quality to the water. And that clearer quality as our thoughts begin to settle is really right at the heart of the practice. It won't stay. I mean, when I say we find it, we get glimpses of it and then it comes and it goes. This is quite normal. So one of the things we want to get used to is the process, the method by which we get that sense of a quietening and a clarity. And it's through the awareness of breath, posture, movement, and all that's involved in those things that we actually refocus our attention away from those thoughts and whatever else is going on for us into something a bit different. You might think of it as walking through a kind of tangled wood and coming upon a clearing, and it's lighter and more settled within that clearing. I'm not suggesting that we stay in the clearing, but it's good to come back to it and good to focus on that quality. Stillness is one of the strong qualities for me, but it's really a very personal thing how you relate to it. So when we move, we change posture and we lose that a little bit and we come back to it. So this is a constant process as we go into different exercises, and particularly when we come to the more complicated exercises, we always find ourselves, oh, what are the hands doing? Can I do this? Can I do that? Before you try and answer those questions, ideally before you even ask yourself those questions, come back to the clearing, come back to that sense of stillness, so that, I'm not saying the questions are wrong, but so that the perspective that you're working from is that quieter perspective. So think about your posture again. We were just talking about posture, and of course, in the chair or standing, we're still trying to follow particular principles, weight sinking down, body in line with the pull of gravity, a sense of, if not geometrical alignment, but certainly connection and harmony between shoulders and hips. So in the chair, we're tilted forward slightly, so it won't, our shoulders won't be directly above our hips, because I'll exaggerate, we're leaning forwards. But there's still a relatively straight line there. What we don't want to happen is this, or worse, this. Can you see? So, you know, you can imagine that line from shoulders to hips. And same thing with the head, actually. I talked about the alignment of the head last week, you know, chin pulled in and so on and so forth. When we tilt forwards, it's this, not this. So the movement comes from hips, buttocks, and legs. So give yourself a chance to establish that first of all, and then slowly beginning to move. So awareness of posture has two benefits to it. One being the change in your posture, and the impact that has on your well-being. The other being this quietening of our minds and the impact that that has on our well-being. So checking your posture just becomes as automatic as checking that your shoelaces are tied up, or knowing what your posture is doing is in the same category as knowing that your shoes are on your feet. And the shoulders. So try not to approach Tai Chi simply as a kind of slow form of exercise, which it is, of course, but this meditational element is also very important. And in fact, my first teacher, Bronwyn Hipkin, used to talk about three aspects to Tai Chi, and then going forwards, she used to refer to the three M's: the martial, the meditational, and what she referred to in that context as the medical, the health aspect. Then hands down to your sides. So, you know, in the chair-based exercises, we don't really go into the martial side of it, but the elements are there, the strength of the movement, the intent behind the movement. They help to train the mind and the awareness feeds back into them, and so on and so forth. They all overlap. So I think of those three elements as being like the legs of a tripod. If you've got a tripod with a camera on it or a telescope on it, and you take away one of the legs, it will fall over. So when we imagine a resistance to the movement, like we're moving through water, or here, like we're winding up thread, that builds that stronger, more connected quality that is really very much related to the martial side of things. Whether or not you're interested in Tai Chi as a martial art, there are those elements there. And then back the other way. Rest your hands. Easing forwards and pushing back. So this is a tilting of your pelvis, a rocking of your pelvis. Generated from your feet and your hips. Maintaining that alignment of shoulder and hip on each side of your body. And you'll feel as you go forwards, the muscles of your back just sort of engaging to hold you upright. So a slight sense of almost pulling through your back as you go forwards, but not as you go back. So you want the muscles in your back to really give a little bit as you feel your legs pushing you back. And turning. So going forwards, clearly there's going to be a sort of supportive role, not a major supportive role because your legs are there, but a supportive role nevertheless for your back. Coming up, the muscles of your back are purely there to maintain the structure, not to pull you up. On the other side. And then going around. Feeling of your spine gently floating in your back. And go back the other way. In a movement like this, we see very clearly that there's a circular quality, and really that applies all the way through to one degree or another. And every circle has a central point, like the hub of a wheel, or the point where the compass goes in to draw a circle on a piece of paper. And that's that clearing in the forest. That's that still point. So in the end, it's not either or, either moving or you've got that space and that stillness, but rather the two enhancing each other. So come back to the center, pull one knee up and push out. One of the terms used to describe that central point and everything that's associated with it in terms of mind and body is, the Chinese term is Zhongding. An English translation of that would be central equilibrium. And then on the other side, so to maintain some of the sort of qualities that come out of central equilibrium, quietness, stillness, space, fluidity of movement through the space. What we want to try and do is get to a point where accessing those qualities, accessing that clearing in the woods is almost an automatic process, one that we don't really need to keep thinking about because it's just very natural to us. It's a habit for us. So we're developing this very positive habit. Habits sometimes have a bad image to them, but not all habits are bad habits. And in fact, what we want to try and do is to develop good habits. The way you do that is through practicing. So when you practice, try and have this idea of the forest with the clearing in it, or whatever image works for you, always present while you're moving. So now, sit back, hands slightly behind your hips, going forwards, your hands circling out, and back in. When we transfer the weight, initially we tend to think of it as forwards and backwards or side to side. But if you're paying attention, close attention, you'll realize it isn't quite like that. It's not forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. There's a slight sense, I sometimes refer to it as pausing, but another way of noticing it is that it's actually a kind of consolidation of that feeling of sinking down. So you go forwards and settle, and back and settle. So within the movements, you will find these little moments when things are settling. And again, we can think of those as returning to that central quality. This time going into fisherman cast the net. The whole time aware of subtle changes in the body. I've talked quite a lot about the effect that this exercise has on ribs and back. Hopefully by now that's an increasingly familiar feeling, one that is there, so that in the end, like with your shoelaces coming undone, it's not so much a question of thinking, is that there? Am I rooted down? Am I moving the weight? Can I feel the opening and closing in the upper body and so on? But rather, when it's not there, it's very suggestive that something needs to be changed. And then coming over. Pigeon spreads its wings. That opening and closing in the chest, very prominent in this exercise. And then press forwards. Pushing a wave or pushing the boat. And the imagery bringing up another factor into play. And your hands twisted. And then this time, coming back to pigeon spreads its wings in a little sequence. And what you may notice is that you lose that sense of stillness. We're kind of, oh, am I going to miss something? Am I going to get it wrong? And that causes us to hurry. Just remind yourself that it's not the end of the world if you do get it wrong, and that the best way to make sure that you don't get it wrong is through not hurrying. So to really focus on those moments of pausing in your hips, in your feet, the sinking down, as ways to just let go of that urge to rush. It's very, very common to experience that. Complete each movement. You go out and then hands pressing back in, and only when they've got to a point where they're above your knees and your weight is forwards do you come back and go into pushing away. You come right back, settle into your hips and then push forwards. Here, when your hands are once again above your knees, you fist, you sit back, again feeling yourself sink into your hips. Go forwards, rotating your arms until your hands are above your knees again, and then you open and come back. So very aware of completing the full stage of each movement. One more round. Open your fingers, rotate your hands out a little bit more, drop them down. And after come back this time, sinking through your hips and your feet, gentle push down through your feet and rooting down. Expanding, contracting. Time changing to the wild goose. So your hands come down, they go out around about the height of your hips. You push up, your elbows drop down, and your hands, again, maybe just a little bit above your shoulders, and then back down to that position adjacent to your hips. So another thing we want to try and do is to develop a real sense of precision about the movements. It's another way of re-engaging our attention with the movement, finding again that that quieter quality. Then when we go into parting the clouds, now the hands drop down a little bit more. Do this one more time. Let your hands come down. But this time as you sit back, bring them in, go back to rooting down with a real sense of where the movement changes. Press the ball down, take your hands out to the sides. Now the wild goose, shoulder height as you come up, hips level with the hips as you go down, and then going forwards for parting the clouds. One more round. A dragon plucks the stars from the sky. And again, giving yourself time and space to complete each movement. You push up, feel the extension through the side of your body, wrap your fingers around, rotate your arm, let your elbow pull your hand down. Feel the weight of your arm on your shoulder, open your fingers, and then switch your attention to the other side. Same thing, extension right through the whole of your body. Trying to be aware of each stage, each moment of the movement. Do one more on each side. And then finish the movement, bring your hands in, push up. This time a little bit higher if it's comfortable. all the way back down, and just a little bit out to your sides, and then push sideways. Take your time. Just think about each stage of the movement. Remember, the movement should be initiated in your feet and then your hips, your shoulders. And then this time, if it's comfortable for you, as you push out sideways, add the turning in your hips. One more round. Don't turn too far. Scooping the sea and looking at the sky. And what I was saying about the alignment on your shoulder and your hips. So this is a folding movement in your hips, followed by an opening, unfolding in your hips. And then grasping the tiger's ears. And then on the other side. And then grasping the tiger's ears. and then sit back. This paying of attention to each moment, mindfulness, if you like to think of it like that, runs counter to how we normally do things. We're encouraged to multitask. You walk along the road, talking to a friend, checking your mobile phone. If you're working somewhere, you've got a stack of things that you need to do. There are all sorts of things, and some of that is quite natural. It's natural for us, not it's not a hard single focus. You're aware of what's going on around you. You're not cutting yourself off from the woods surrounding the clearing by any means, but neither are you rushing at things. I've sometimes noticed with Dragon Plucks the Stars from the Sky, we start off as this, we take our time, and then it's this, and we get about sort of halfway down, and suddenly this hand is starting to move, and so on and so forth. So we're cultivating that habit of coming into the clearing, cultivating the habit of mindfulness. This is a key element in Tai Chi, and I love the phrase in one of the Tai Chi classic writings that urges us to seek the stillness within the movement. When we get to more complicated exercises, it's probably your greatest asset. You're trying to do, dragonfly skims the water. Oh, what have I got to do? And it's like, no, turn. And in those movements, we find a physical location in our hips, our waist, our feet, our legs, to place our attention. And if you're interested in the Tai Chi forms, the sequences of movements, that becomes even more important. It's almost as though their complexity is intended to throw us off course, to force us to come back. And one of the things I've noticed training with different people, and when we look at the martial side of Tai Chi, we have these partner work exercises. We try and push each other, shove each other around, always very gently, but nevertheless we are trying to do it. And sometimes I found myself, and I'm thinking, this person may be older than me, smaller than me, whatever. Maybe I can go a bit faster. If I go a bit faster, maybe I can push. Oh no, I can't. Somehow the really developed practitioners of this art always seem to have a little bit more time, a little bit more space. You move a bit faster, they go, oh, there you go. it's easy. So that meditational element really underpins everything else in the art, I think. And it has tremendous benefits. It's a place of almost a refuge, a quieter place, a less stressful place. And so it's a crucial aspect of Tai Chi as a rounded art. So now, forwards and backwards, and with that little circular movement, and then with one hand, I'll suggest your right hand so you can mirror my movements. Notice that my hand doesn't actually move side to side very much. It doesn't do this and this. It stays more or less out from my shoulder, not in a rigid way. It's my body moving. So essentially my arm is just moving forwards and backwards a little bit. Same thing now on the other side. So there's a distinct quality when we get this almost sort of like minimal movement. There's a distinct quality of movement through the whole of our body and a quietness in our arms and our hands. When we lose that quietness in our arms and our hands, when we lose that quality of movement, we've kind of stumbled out of the clearing. And both together, stir in the beans. So this should encourage you to really focus your attention on the center of your body and the movement of your weight. Your attention has probably drifted away. Come back to your feet, your hips, your waist. Build the movement up from there again. Just check that you're not holding your fingers tight. Then bring your hands together. Open your hands and tapping over your face. Over your head and your neck. Your shoulder, your arm, side, upper part of your chest, belly, and your legs. Okay, and stand carefully. This term mindfulness is quite widely used these days in our health services, coming from the work of a guy in America who took traditional techniques and adapted them for a kind of modern setting. And they've been shown to have a whole range of benefits for us, both mental and physical. And I had an interesting experience once when the first time I ever taught the movement Parting the Wild Horse's Mane as a chair-based exercise to a group, and it was a very interesting. So I knew it wasn't going to go particularly well. The first time I taught it, they'd never done it before, so we all had a bit of a laugh, and it was fine. They did very well for the first time. Afterwards, one of the women came up to me, and she said, "Well, the funny thing was she couldn't do the exercise. I was all over the place. But she said the funny thing is when I came to the standing and the walking, I felt much more stable." And her words were, her sort of like experience of that was that she had to concentrate so hard on trying to do Parting the Wild Horse's Mane that she was still concentrating when she stood up. I wouldn't use the term concentration myself. I would think more about this clearing in the forest, sort of awareness. But nevertheless, it was a really interesting example of where what I'm talking about, this meditational aspect of the art, had a very quick and a very direct impact on something very fundamental to us, which is our ability to walk for that person. I've always remembered that because I wasn't expecting that. I absolutely wasn't expecting that, that kind of feedback the first time. So this is not some kind of sort of abstract philosophical idea that would be nice. This is as essential to your health and well-being as anything physical, any physical aspect of the art. So once again, correct your posture, bring your weight forwards, sink your hips back, soften in your knees and your hips. Here we do feel that the shoulder is in line with the hip on each side. And then sinking down and pushing up. Each time you sink down, you could think of it, if you like, as a returning to that clearing, to that quieter space. But eventually what we want to be able to do is to carry that quality with us into the movements. But what I'm doing is really emphasizing that aspect for you so that you get a chance to really focus on it. You need to be able to do that. You need, like doing anything, there are certain things that you need to practice before they become integrated into how you do the whole activity. And then change. Change. Just here as you sink down, feel the full weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders for a moment. Soften your fingers. And then from this position here, as you push up, turn back to the front as you sink down. Again, the full weight of your arms here. And here. Foot forwards. Transfer your weight and settle. Transfer your weight and settle. And if you're really paying attention, a very common experience is that in that process of settling, you reach a point and you can feel the point where it seems as though your legs are just automatically pushing you back. So eventually it becomes quite natural to pause so that you're just waiting for the push. And it's at that point that you raise your toes and your heel. It's at that point that you're aware of your posture, your root, your alignment. And you can step in. On the other side. Raise your toes and your heel. Stepping in. Good. When we do fisherman cast a net, here, at this point, see where my arms are? Not here, but here. Feel the full weight of my arms. Full weight of my arms. Full weight of my arms. And that's when I turn for wind blows the willows. So you can see again that awareness guides us into potentially quite complicated movements. So I'm going to do this with my back to you. Have your left foot forwards. Start with fisherman cast a net. And then wind blows the willows. Begin to raise your toes and your heel. And if you're comfortable with this, step it in. And on your other side, so fisherman cast a net. Wind blows the willows. Then raising your toes and your heel. And stepping. And shake out. Good. As always, when we finish, we're coming back again. So another image we might use. I've talked about the clearing in the forest. The mountain might be another image. Pick the images that work for you. This is important. They're just images. If they help you to access these feelings, then that's great. So hands down to your sides and embrace tiger. Return to the mountain. And rest. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope that was useful to you. So
Yes, thank you very much.
remember to take that little bit of time when you can. Look after yourselves. See you all soon, I hope.
Yes, you too.
Yes.
Take care. Thank you.
So take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh,